Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another review from the Hammer House of Horrors. Tonight we're going to be looking at another one of these sort of short story sort of movies from Hammer. Sorry about that, guys. Dog's just jumping around and he's not the camera flying. Yeah, so we're going to be looking at another one tonight. This one we're going to be looking at on here is called Rude Awakening. Now, this is probably one of the least popular sort of stories on it because it is quite a slow sort of story on there. It's a haunting sort of story, like a haunting, like a ghost story, and it's based on this guy who's like an estate agent, and he's having an affair. Of course, all these sort of like English films all seem to be based around like affairs and stuff. He's having this affair with his secretary. He's a state agent. He's obviously the manager of there. Anyway, one day he's in there with his secretary, and a man walks in trying to sell his manor house. Now, so he walks in and tries to sell this manor house, and then he offers to the guy the keys and a map for him to go and view it to see what he thinks of it and what it could be worth. So he takes the keys and everything, and then drives off in his Ford Escort, which is great to see because my dad used to have one of them. Every time I see that, I see myself and my sister sitting in the back with me mum and dad going out somewhere for the day or down to the social club. Yeah, I remember the Ford Escort, and we used to put the dogs in the back. Yeah, so yeah, he drives off and he arrives at this manor house. We see an old. It's very very British again. This episode. It's got like it just looks British from the town to the countryside to the phone box to everything. So he arrives to this manor house that looks all sort of ran down and sort of clamped out, and he tries the keys, but it doesn't work. And then the door seems to open on itself, and he wanders in, and we are sort of we see a fully furnished manor house, but covered in cobwebs and not been used for years. And he's sort of like looking around all this sort of area, and he goes into the dining room where there's like all dinners all set up but covered in cobwebs, and there's these sort of like suits of armor which seem to be very popular with well-off sort of people. There's these suits of armor in these in this dining room, and there's also a dumb waiter. Now, if you're not sure what a dumb waiter is, it's sort of like a mechanical mechanical lift that used to go down to the kitchens up to like the dining area and stuff, so they could bring the servants could bring the food up like on a rope or you know a chain, just so they don't have to sort of carry it up. And anyway, so there's a dumb waiter there, and these dumb waiters always have like this kind of like not microphone, but has a communication part on there, which he can speak through to the kitchen. You know, next dinner, please. Whatever. Anyway, so he speaks to it and walks away, and it replies, and he's saying, "Oh, you shouldn't have done it." He said, "Done what?" I said, "Killed your wife." He goes, "I haven't killed my wife," because he's married, he lives with his wife, but always having affairs. Because I haven't killed my wife, because oh, you will later, and says you'll be killing her later on. And then the dumb waiter sort of comes up, and then a body falls out of it, and it's his body of his wife. And it really freaks him out. And then the two suits of armor start moving towards him, come to life and start moving towards him. To sort of like attack and kill him, I suppose. And he wakes up, he's having a nightmare, and you see him nearly punching his wife. And she said, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "Oh," and he's telling her about the nightmare, about what was going on. And it's very sort of confusing in the sense, but then you realise it's a dream sequence. Anyway, he goes back to work, and his secretary looks different. Now she looks like a punk girl, like with all the sort of like the Union Jack clothing and the black and the different colour hair. Every time he has these sequences, because it's like a loop, it's a bit like a Groundhog Day sort of episode. It goes round and round and round. And every time she's different, but although everything else seems quite the same. And he explains to her about the dream, and she says, well, why don't you go back to the house to see if it was a dream or things like that. He says, great idea. And he says, I've still got the map. And she says, well, how can it be a dream anyway if you've still got the map? And he says, oh, I don't know. Anyway, so he drives back out again once to the mansion. And again, this time when he gets there, he can't access it because there's cows in the field and there's a gate. And he goes to the old phone that's there, and then this other woman, he sees his messages in the phone book. Why did you kill her? Why did you do it? And then he gets seduced by like another sort of woman at the phone box. And all this crazy things sort of go on loop and loop and loop. And then he goes to the house at another time, and it's like a woman living there, but an oldish sort of woman, but it's a ghost. He doesn't realise that until later on that it's actually a ghost. When he hears the voice again, you shouldn't have done this sort of thing. And he sort of tries to get out of the house away from this ghost, and then he walks into like a hangman's noose that's been put there by the servants, because they're all ghosts, and they try hanging him. And then we cut back to him in bed again with his wife, and he's got his sheet all wrapped up around his neck and all this sort of thing. So it's like all of his dreams sort of interfere with his normal life. Because like I said, when he thought he's been hanged, he had all the sheet round his neck, and all this sort of thing goes on. His wife is aware of him having affairs, and he keeps asking her for a divorce, but he won't give it to her. Anyway, and this sort of dream reoccurs and reoccurs. So what the hell's going on? You need to watch it to find out, because I'm not going to tell you anymore. It is one of the slower episodes. So what do I think of Rude Awakening? I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really clever and really cool, and for its time, it's way ahead of its time. When you look at a lot of J horrors like Ring, Grudge, and all this sort of thing, and a lot of these sort of horrors have reoccurring sort of things going in it. This was way before that, so it's almost like, has this influenced any other sort of films, because it does have a loop, like that horror film based on the ship called Triangle. That's a looped film. And we have had other sort of films with dream sequences that every time you enter the dream sequence, it's a little different, you know. Nightmare on Elm Street even, but it's kind of clever in its own right. It is slow, it's really well acted, and I like the way it's written as well. It's really cleverly written, and it's not boring. Although it's a bit of a slow burn, it's not boring. It's one that you thinking, what on earth's going on, and you want to watch it to find out what happens. But luckily, it's not a long. It's like 54 minutes. Again, all these are about just under an hour long, so it's not too long to get bored with it. And because the loop is different every time, you wonder what's going to happen next time. And then you want to see what's going to happen in the long term. Is it going to come back? Is this haunting real, or is it something in his head, or is it even being punished for having an affair? You need to watch that and find out. The minuses of it, yes, it is slow, and it does lack any sort of gore or anything like that. Whereas the last one we watched, the Witching Time, that was fantastic. There was some gore, there's some nudity in it. There is some nudity in this one as well. But it is, apart from that, it's really good. I'm going to score this a great watch and give it a 7 out of 10. Yeah, it's not one of the higher sort of scoring ones on there, which I could look at and give you all the 9s out of 10s, all the 10s out of 10s. But no, I want you to show you some of the ones that people don't tend to talk about or like so much. So that's why I went for that one, the Rude Awakening. I believe that's about the 3rd or 4th episode in the 3rd episode in the series, because the series got a really strong start with the Witching Time and stuff like that. And so I wanted to have a look at one that's not so obvious, and I really enjoyed it. So I really highly recommend you guys picking this set up if you can. It can be a bit pricey, but the reason why it's pricey is because Network, the company that brought it out, have gone into liquidation. They're no longer about. They went into liquidation this year, which is a shame because they did release a few good things. I've got a few sort of like complete TV series of things like Thunderbirds and Stingray by Network, and there's some horror films. I've got some Hammer films that are on Network, which are fantastic and really well produced. And they've remastered them so well that it's such a shame to see a small company go down like that. Because it's such a shame because that they obviously haven't got the budget of like Second Sight or Arrow or anything like that. But what they did produce was fantastic and looks absolutely amazing. Anyway, so that's the second one. We've got one more to look at later on in the week. I'm not sure which one yet. I'll again pick it at random. And I hope you're enjoying these. Please check out some horror channels for me till the next one. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Designs, Pizzlewell, I'm the Ice Lord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, and Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House. And of course, a massive shout out to the lad Lemon Lord. Sorry for the change of environment because I'm downstairs watching it downstairs today. Because it's quite warm today. It's actually cooler downstairs, so I'm sitting downstairs today, and that's quite cool. But I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope you've enjoyed the Amicus week and the Hammer week. Next week, I'm probably going to go back to doing some reviews, some other movies. That I want to look at a few classic horror films, because I've picked a few up on 4K and stuff, which I'm really want to talk through, and some classic horrors that don't really get talked about and are lost, if you like. People think, oh yeah, I love that sort of film. One's obvious, and a couple of the others are not so obvious. So I want to have a little look at some films next week like that. So until then, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I see you all soon.